Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is San. Today we are looking at Micro-frontend with Angular, Webpack 5 and Module Federation. Why we need a Micro-frontend and what is the use case of Micro-frontend and what Webpack 5 and Module Federation try to solve. If you like my content, please hit like and subscribe to my channel. So let's start it. This video was sponsored by fetibar.com. If you want to buy a painting, please visit their sites and buy a beautiful painting from them. What is Micro-frontend? And we will be looking at building a Micro-frontend with Angular. So what is the benefit of using Micro-frontends? So Micro-frontends derive from the concept from microservices. So if you have worked on backend technologies, either Java, .NET, Python, or Go, you might have come across the microservices. So the same concept has been applied into the Micro-frontend. Now the Micro-frontends was trying to be done from very early days with iframes, and there are some other technologies. But it was not very well suited for modern applications. So that's why currently we have a Webpack 5 which uses the benefit of module federation, and that leads us to create a Micro-frontends in a desired way. So there are many advantages of using Micro-frontend. So if you want to split your teams into a different unit of services, for example, like a small services and deployed independently and they decoupled from each other, which means each team has their own services. For example, if you go to Amazon websites, so they have many services over here. So this can be a Micro-frontend. So I don't know they have built the Amazon Web Services with Micro-frontend architecture or not, but this is one of the use cases for Micro-frontend. You can have a different service for the search item and entire header item on the top. Again, you can also divide these sections into small services and all these orders, and if you go to the order items and all those things, this might be a different small services that is attached to the final services and it comes in the browser. So these are all the use cases of Micro-frontends. There are many websites that have been using Micro-frontends, such as Google Cloud is the one of the example. And now the next question is when you should use the Micro-frontend architecture. It depends on the company project. If your application is going to be very large, you should consider using a Micro-frontend because your team will be very large and you can divide a small service into individual parts. So you can deploy an application individually and its services are not coupled with each other. So each team might not need to think about the other services. And each applications are divided into the small services. So business logic will be written into each services. So when you have a large enterprise application and you want to split and you want to have a decoupling service from each other, you should think about a Micro-frontend architecture. Let's see how we can generate a Micro-frontend application in Angular and what is the basic concept of architecture using NX. So we are using NX because NX solves lots of complexity of module federation and Webpack 5. So we don't need to think a lot on that because there are lots of configuration you need to do if you are not using a library such as NX, and you need to deal with all Webpack 5 and module federation configuration. So they hide all the complexity for us and makes it easy to write a front-end applications using micro architecture. So let's see the architecture. Now with application architecture, with module federation, we have a concept of host and remotes. So what does this does? Host is the application that refers to the external services. The external services in our case is remotes. Now, remote applications are the one that holds the each individual services. Might be a domain divided into, for example, in Amazon Web Services, that might be a search, or it might be a menu that has been shown at the top. So these are the remote application. So this is the basic concept of module federation with the micro frontend application. So for you have a host at the top, and you have a remote applications. So at the bottom, something here. So I am just giving you an example of Amazon services. So this is a host application, and which has an implicit reference of all this remote application. So in case of Amazon Web Services, that might be a search, this might be an order, this might be an payment. So it has an implicit dependency reference, for each remote application. So when you build an application with annex and module federation, the host application will have a reference to each individual remote application. I will show you this one when we create an application with Annex and Angular, how we can do it. So this is the basic example of architecting MFE. The host application always have a dependent, and there is only one JS file. It will be run on the browser when you browse the application. So the application size will not be depend on the reference of your remote application, because we will be sharing libraries between this thing. So if you have, suppose you have an Angular application, you will refer all the Angular libraries at the core level. So you're on the remote application, you don't need to refer again the another Angular core libraries or any other third-party libraries. So when you are building an application or running an application, the host application already have libraries that are needed for Angular. So it will refer the remote applications to the same library. So you don't need to write you don't need to provide different libraries on each remote application. That will be referred to one. And the remote libraries are always be loaded in a browser with some network calls. So they will be loaded with some network call. We can see on the network on a developer tool when we use it. So they will be loaded as per the network call. So the basic concept is you have a host which will be refers to each remote application. Now let's create a micro frontend application with Angular. Since we are using Annex, so you need to install bunch of Annex CLI tool for that. So I have already told how to install the Annex CLI in the previous videos of monorepo. I will share a link in the description, then you can have a look. So with Angular, when you are generating an application, you have a command Annex G for generate, or you can write as generate as a whole, then at NRWL, which is the company that providing this library. So I am generating an Angular application, so it will be Angular. Now we have a concept of host. So I am creating a host application, and then we will have a reference of remotes. Now you can, at the beginning, you can just create a host application, then again you can add as a reference to the remote applications. But if you already know what are the remote applications, then can you easily provide a host with reference. So you have a command something called cell, and that remotes. So now this is the reference to the projects that is having as a remote. So in my case, I am creating an application, something called product discount. So these are all individual Angular application. So I need to create a workspace. So I get an exception. It's saying the current directory isn't part of the annex workspace. So at the beginning, you need to create a annex workspace with workspace name. So you have a command over here. Just we can copy this one and give a workspace name. In my case, I will give something called Pretty Bird. Create apps. So now let's go to that workspace. So I have Pretty Bird, this one. So over here, if you can see, it added a package.json and all the basic app that Node application accepts. Now let's create a host and remote application this time. Like generate, I can say like this, same command. So if you are getting this error, so it means our empty workspace doesn't have a reference to our Angular application. So let's open this one on Visual Studio and we can compare. So if I go to package.json, it doesn't have any dependency of the Angular. So first we need to add a dependency to Angular applications. So for that, we can run this command npm install sabdep and our Angular. So after installing that nrwl Angular, if we check the package.json, we can see now this nrwl Angular 14.5.1 has been added. So now we can run this command. So it's asking us which CSS file we want to use. So we'll use sass as CSS. Now after creating an application and installing all the dependencies, now if we go back to our VS Code, so inside the app we can see a discount and product application and cell. Cell is the host application that I have given in the command. So by default it uses Cypress as an end-to-end testing. So it creates a main application and a testing end-to-end application for you. So let's see in module federation config.js over here. If we can see in the cell, in our case cell is the host. So if we see the module federation configuration, it has a reference to remote and discount over here. So this is the configurations that uses to run the application. Now if we go to and if you see module federation config for this one, so you can see over here, this is the name that has been referred over there. So if we go to our cell module federation, so over here, this name is basically this name, and it exposes one of the entry point, which is the part of, if you see here, apps remote entry. This is the module that has been exported for you. So this component is been exposed and this name is the reference to this one. Similarly, the discount is the same one. So if we see the discount and if we check the module federation, we have a discount, and again it exposes one of the entry point for this one. So this is the basic structure that Annex creates for us with a concept of module federation that is been referring to each entry parts. So add a project later to the host. So you need to refer the host, otherwise you need to manually configure these things if you don't refer it. But it's always better because Annex CLI always does for you. So if you want to refer this to the if you want to add a new application to the host as a remote application, so we have a command similar to that. So in this case we have to write something like annex generate sim. So instead of host over here, we need to write remote. Then we need to give application name. Suppose I give an order, then it needs to be a reference of host. In our case, it is a cell. So if you don't give this command, it won't be referred in module federation configuration file. So if I run this command, again it will ask me the same thing to configure the styles, and it will create an extension and project for us and install the dependencies. VS Code now. Now we can see a order project has been added over here, and this is the module federation for host application. You can see the cell is added over here. Now how do we run this one? Like, you can run application individually. If you want to run an application individually, like you can also use Angular CLI for this one to run the application. But if you want to run application at once, like for example, if I go back to terminal, and if I am here, so you have a command such as serve. So over here in a dev mode, because you want to know if you want to change anything and you want browser to be refreshed, so either you can individually run an application as ng-serve, the host name, and the remote application names you can do. But if you want to run entire application at once, so you have a command ng-serve host, then dash open the remote tabs. So in my case it's product, discount, and order. So if I run this one, so this is not an host in our case, it will be cell in our case. So it does so I can see over here the project is been run for me with some URLs. So this is the application that is running with Annex. Now let's see how this application works. Now if you refresh this one, so these are the reference files that the host application is using. So your remote application won't do anything apart from loading your application. So this or any other packages that you are using, it will be referred from this host application only. So now let's see if you are going to an order application. See, if you are loading an order application, it's loading from the remote modules. So this is one of the application that is running. So if I browse this one, the order application is running on 4203. See over here, it's only the order application. You don't see a whole application. Similarly, you can go with discount. It's the reference application is been loaded. Similarly with product, it's been loaded. So if you check, product is running on 4201, discount is running on 4202. So this is the module federation that solves for you. So let's check one more thing. If you come to the host application, so if you check the routes over here, see, it's loading a child element as asynchronously. So It's loading a module as remote entry for each of them. Have some libraries that you want to reference by yourself. If you go to the annex.dev and if you come to share libraries, you can create a core module federation config.js and you can provide all your libraries over here, and all your remotes and host application will share the same libraries if you want to do. This one was how we can create a micro front end with module federation and webpack 5 with Angular. In the next tutorial we will create microservices with Micronaut.